What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 2 of my weekly NFL pick show for the 2013-2014 NFL season. Now, if you followed the show from last year, you'd know that this is usually the time that I would come on and talk about a couple of storylines that I found interesting from the previous week. But we bitch-slapped those motherfuckers and sent them packing. You don't come on here to hear about stuff that you already know happened. You come on here to find out my results from last week and get my picks for the week that's upcoming. So we're going to get right into my results from week 1 before we get into the picks for week 2. We're going to start with the top 2. That's the new feature on the show. Usually should be where we're starting. My results from last week weren't really very good, to be perfectly honest. Start with the over-under. I got both of them wrong. I told you that Seattle and Carolina was going to go over 45. That ended up being an OU killer with only, I think, 19 points scored in the game. I said it was going to go over. Obviously, I was wrong in that. And Minnesota and Detroit, I thought was going to stay under 46.5 points. Didn't do that. I think it hit, 58? So oops, that was almost 2 scores. So that went over there, so I was 0-2 on the over-under for week 1. A little bit better on the against the spread. I was 1-1 against the spread in week 1. I correctly told you to take New Orleans -3, favored in their game against Atlanta, and they ended up pulling that one out. Now, I told you, unfortunately, to take Baltimore +9.5, and Peyton Manning went all Madden on rookie over the Ravens defense that really looked old and slow and just not very good. So that one didn't work out. New Orleans -3 ended up working out. So it's 1-1 against the spread, 0-2 over-under for week 1. Let's take you right into my platinum, gold, silver, and bronze picks from last week in week 1. We'll start with the bronze pick. I told you to take New England straight up over Buffalo. That worked out, but barely. New England beats Buffalo 23-21. The Bills had a second half lead in this game, but they only managed 3 first downs and under 75 yards of total offense in their last 5 possessions. But the Patriots have a lot of work to do. They're going to be without Shane Vereen now. Vereen is injured. He is out for at least 4 weeks. So the load is going to go to LeGarrette Blount and Stephen Ridley. I know they benched Stephen Ridley in the last game. Let's hope that we see better things from him. Silver pick, I told you to take Detroit over Minnesota. That ended up working out 34-24. 191 total yards for Reggie Bush in his Detroit debut. That is really, really good numbers. Got it done with his hands as well as with his feet. Adrian Peterson was held under 100 yards rushing, which I didn't directly predict, but basically did when I said I thought Detroit had a really good run defense. However, he did manage to get into the end zone twice. All in all, I think they held them to enough. So all in all, I would say that's a successful game against AP. 4 turnovers by Christian Ponder. This is going to be a huge problem for the Vikings this year. Vikings fans should be worried about this. Gio, I'm looking at you. The gold pick, I told you to take Chicago over Cincinnati. Another very, very, very close game. Chicago pulls it out 24-21. The big turning point in this game was Charles Tillman's forced fumble late in the 4th quarter that gave Chicago possession back. Chicago took the lead off of that possession, held off Cincinnati. What I will say about the Bengals, Andy Dalton to AJ Green is going to be one of the elite quarterback to wide receiver connections in all of football this year. Remember who told you. And the platinum pick, the scariest game of the week for me. Not only was it going to decide the YouTube Prognosticators ESPN Fantasy Football League matchup that I had between myself and Sean Ryan from Team Take'em, but it was also going to be my platinum pick from last week. That was Houston and San Diego. Houston pulls it out in the end. San Diego kind of falls apart in the second half of that game. San Diego led this game by 21 points, ended up losing the game 31-28 to Houston. The quarterbacks combined for 541 passing yards and 7 touchdowns. Real big numbers. A great performance from Phillip Rivers. Didn't really have the yards, but had 4 touchdowns. Great performance. Once again, a defensive play ended up being the difference in this game. It was Brian Cushing's 18-yard diving pick 6 that tied the game. Houston's defense got a stop like they're going to need all season, and they took it down, kicked a field goal at the end of the game to win. But Houston's definitely got some concerns there in that secondary because, again, Rivers throwing 4 touchdown passes, and was able to pass with relative ease in the game. So I was 4-0 on my platinum, gold, silver, and bronze picks this week. Overall, I was 13-3 in week 1. That is great numbers. That is a 6-pick swing from week 1 of last season where I went 10-6. So that's big numbers there. 13-3. I sit in the 97th percentile on Yahoo. We go to the private pick'em. I'm in second place out of 16. We picked up another one, so 16 people in the private pick'em. I sit in second place, raking in 113 of 136 possible confidence points for a clip of 83%. Shout out to our week 1 winner, Jay Cutler for MVP. That's a great name. Also went 13-3 like I did, managed his points a little bit better. He ended up with 122 out of 136 possible confidence points, a clip of 90%. So again, shout out to Jay Cutler for MVP. You're our week 1 winner and overall leader. So now let's get into the week 2 predictions here. We're going to start with the top 2, the against the spread and the over-under. Like last week, we'll start with the over-under. My top over-under play this week is in the game of Chicago versus Minnesota. Now the number here is 42. It's a pretty manageable number. You have Minnesota, who put up 24 points in week 1. You have Chicago, who put up 24 points in week 1. Chicago's head coach, Mark Trestman, if you didn't know him, if you never watched the CFL, he was head coach for the Montreal Alouettes for a couple of years. Very good offense there in Montreal, and they've got a very good offense in Chicago. And once they really adapt to having their new coach there, it's going to be very, very good. They've got a lot of weapons. Minnesota, of course, has the weapon, Adrian Peterson. They've got some weapons in their passing game if Christian Ponder can be all right here. Yeah, Chicago's got a good defense. However, they did give up 21 points to Cincinnati in week 1. I think 42 as a number is too low, so I'm going to be going over 42 on this. My top OU play, Chicago, Minnesota, take over 42 points. And my second over-under play on the week comes in the Philadelphia versus San Diego game. Now, the number here is a big number. The number is 53. But if we take a look at it, Philly's offense looked fantastic in week 1. San Diego's offense, in terms of points scored, looked very, very good. Phillip Rivers has that team going. Michael Vick playing phenomenal. Shady McCoy looks unstoppable. And both of these defenses kind of crumbled towards the latter parts of their games. 2 high-scoring offenses, 2 defenses that may be kind of questionable in terms of their gas tank down the line. San Diego has a short turnaround from playing Monday Night Football last night, which was basically Tuesday morning football, coming into a 1 p.m. game on Sunday. I like this game to go over. I know 53 is a relatively big number. That might scare some people off. But in the Philadelphia-San Diego game, I'm telling you, go over 53 points. Now, there are a number of interesting against the spread options to take this week. I'm going to give you my personal favorite. My personal favorite here comes in the KC versus Dallas game. The line here right now sits at Kansas City -3. I do understand that Kansas City is at home. I do understand that Kansas City had a dominant win in week 1. That being said, the game was against Jacksonville, guys. Jacksonville is not a good franchise. So yeah, they beat Jacksonville 28-2. Yeah, they put up 4 touchdowns in that game. But Jamal Charles is kind of hurt, kind of injured, laid up a little bit again. What a shock there. Meanwhile, you take a look at what Dallas did in week 1. Dallas looked very, very good. Now, granted, the Giants did not play a good game in that game. You can probably argue that the Cowboys didn't win that game. The Giants lost that game. That being said, I still liked what I saw out of Dallas. I look at Kansas City -3. I'm not convinced by it. I'm just not convinced by the Chiefs until I start seeing them do it consistently. And I know people will quickly say, well, 3 or 4 years ago, they won their division. And yeah, but last year they didn't do much. The year before that, they didn't do much. So my top ATS play this week is going to be to take Dallas +3. I think Dallas wins this game outright, even though the game is in Kansas City. So my top against the spread play this week is Dallas +3. The Atlanta Falcons playing at home, 6.5-point favorites as of press time against the St. Louis Rams. Now, of course, this is Steven Jackson, who now plays for the Falcons, getting the opportunity to play his former teammates in St. Louis. I liked what St. Louis did in Week 1. They were very, very impressive in their game against Arizona, whereas, of course, Atlanta fell, as I predicted, to New Orleans. That being said, Atlanta at home is a different beast. Like, they are like the Green Bays and like the Baltimores. I know 6.5 is a lot, although it is only one full score. So I like that. I think you take a very good team here in Atlanta, you put them at home against a pretty good team there in St. Louis, but a long way from a complete team, if you know what I mean. I'm going to take Atlanta there. So my number 2 against the spread play this week, the Atlanta Falcons, minus 6.5 at home to the St. Louis Rams. Fire away. Now let's get into my platinum, gold, silver, and bronze picks for Week 2 in the NFL. We're going to start with the bronze pick, which has the Cincinnati Bengals playing at home to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I'm going to be picking on Pittsburgh here a little bit because can you forgive losing to Tennessee? Not only losing to Tennessee, but now, of course, they also have some players like Marquise Pouncey, who is done for the year. And Pittsburgh is going to be very hard-pressed to win games in this season. The biggest Pittsburgh Steeler fan I know, Brian, only predicting them to have a 6-10 season this year. I don't think they get that first W against Cincinnati at home, who played a very, very good game against Chicago. And even though every team in this division lost in Week 1, I think Cincinnati was the one that looked the best while doing it, if we want to put it that way. So I'll take the Cincinnati Bengals at home to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers for my bronze pick. My silver pick sees the Baltimore Ravens coming back home to play the Cleveland Browns. Now, when you look at a team like Cleveland, there's a team with only one weapon, and that one weapon is Trent Richardson. And to be perfectly honest, while I think he had an impressive rookie year with 11 touchdowns, for whatever reason, I'm just not convinced by the kid. He didn't have a very good Week 1. I don't know. I'm just not... For whatever reason, I'm just not convinced by the kid. Baltimore's defense, as I mentioned, looked old and tired and busted against Denver, but Denver's also an all-world offense. I don't see an X factor for Cleveland to be able to beat Baltimore, even if they were in Cleveland. I'm going to take the Ravens to beat the Cleveland Browns at home for my silver pick. The gold pick, a game we already talked about, the Atlanta Falcons playing at home to St. Louis. I won't say too much more about it. I've got Atlanta winning this game. St. Louis, very, very good. I like the running back now that they have, that rookie Daryl Richardson. Too much versus not enough here. Atlanta, one of the top teams in the league. Yeah, they lost to New Orleans, but I think New Orleans is going to have a great year this year. So I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons to beat the St. Louis Rams at home for my gold pick. And the platinum pick, the top pick of the week, the Green Bay Packers playing at home to the Washington Redskins. This game, you can almost guarantee that this game is going to go over whatever the point total was. I would have used it on my top 2, but there were no numbers for this game yet. Numbers for this game have not come out as of right now, so obviously can't use them. But if you're going to pick this game, do yourself a favor and pick the over. Now, Green Bay, very, very interesting. In the past 2 seasons plus, have lost only 2 games at home. You take a look at Washington. Washington had a very impressive second half of their game. The first half didn't look very good. RG3 looked hobbled up and looked out of sync and looked rusty and looked like a completely different player than he looked in the second half of that game. Looked great. The game's in Green Bay, so it might be another one of those weeks where you just ride your hometown teams and ride them as hard as you can. For the platinum pick, I'm going to take Green Bay to beat Washington. It's going to be a high score. Take the over in this game. Platinum pick, Green Bay over Washington. There you go, kids. Wasn't that fun? Here's the rest of the picks for Week 2 of the 2013-2014 National Football League season. Coming at you. That's the Week 2 show for you, folks. Comments, hate, and love in the comments section below. 13-3 in Week 1. Looking very, very good there. 4-0 on the Platinum, Gold, Silver, and Bronze picks. Hopefully we can get back on track here with the top 2 in Week 2. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Do not forget, if you want to join the Pick'em League, get in on it now. Get yourself a shout out on these videos. And also, check the description of this video. You're going to see a complete list of all of my other YouTube family in terms of football prognosticating. Get on there. Check out their picks as well. I will see you again, week number 3.